When you go, okay, you had a leak, you go back to your IT guys, oh, we got it covered now, boss. Wow, really? Really? So there's really room for those of you who are, those of us who are third parties to companies. Who owns the problem? Well, this reminds me of the little red hen story you read to kids when you were little. You know, who wants to help me, grow the wheat? Said, not I. And who wants to help eat the bread? And all the hands go up. No, sir, said the little red hen. So what do the lawyers say? Well, our job's shifting liability. Security's a technical issue. What do the techies say? Our job is making stuff work. Employee behavior is not our problem. Management says, well, our job's making a profit. Security's a technical and legal problem, and on any given day of the week, I got more important things to think about. HR says our job's avoiding trouble. Anybody here from HR? Okay, good. We can unload on HR. And security is trouble. The result, nobody owns this problem. So here's what organizationally this looks like. You got 4 different stovepipes. What's missing from this? Right? Unless there is policy that runs top to bottom through an organization, we can't deal with it. We have to integrate these things. When's the last time in your organization or in the organization you work for, the right people from those 4 stovepipes were in one room dealing with this problem? Hardly ever. Now, I think for us lawyers, the lawyers here are, as much of a part of the problem as anybody else. But lawyers, there's business to be done here for law firms. I've taken the lawyers out of the stovepipe because the policy problem is really law and policy. And lawyers are in a particularly good position to play the unifying role. That's one of the things we do. We're not the technical experts, and we cannot do this without the IT people. Law firms who want to do more of this business have to have really good relationships with forensic companies and IT providers. But this is what I think the solution looks like. And there is, for those firms that want to go get this business, this is how I think, this is the pitch to take, and the thought I want to leave you with this morning. This is, it's not all bad news here, folks, because so much of the problem is preventable. And on the days when you're inclined to be discouraged about how bad this problem is, both organizationally and technically, remember, first of all, if it weren't a bad problem, you wouldn't be making a living at it. And secondly, this is a serious problem, and like all serious problems, it is not going to be solved. Really strategic problems aren't solved. Eventually they go out of date. They have to be managed. That's the business that all of us are in. Thank you. We have some time for questions, don't we? About 8 minutes or something like that for questions, if anybody has some more. Yes, sir.
You said there's no way to do that for whether software has openings for backdoors or hardware, but there must be a heuristic because all the black hat hackers are going in there and exploiting those lines of code. So isn't there some way of, finding out what they're doing and then try to replicate it in a test environment?
Well, they're not doing the same thing over and over again. What you're saying implicitly is that, boy, if people are smart enough to figure out how to break this stuff, why can't we test it? People do test, but there are an awful lot of, and they do try. They put it in controlled environments. They put it in a sandbox. They see what happens. They try different things. But the number of different things you can try is practically limitless. And there are so many really smart people trying to hook the stuff and break it. It's hard to catch up with them. It's very, very hard to catch up with them. It's expensive to do that kind of work. And we just haven't been good enough to keep up with the number of people whose business, this kind of hacking is a business now. It's a well-developed business model. You can't keep up. Sir.
I'd noticed at a number of the RSA conference, a number of other conferences, Black Hat conferences, you had tough guys in the NSA who have been presenting. So they're presenting to a bunch of hackers. This sort of weird institutional presentation by NSA to guys that are sort of outside the mainstream. So it sounds like you're talking about trying to, the question is, how do you crowdsource looking for vulnerabilities in a way that profits institutions? But there's an inherent difficulty in building security in a crowdsourced fashion. But there's a lot of simplicity. There's a lot of speed, and sort of functionally what we're seeing today is hacking, and looking for vulnerabilities is sort of tailor-made for crowdsourcing.
Well, some of that does go on, actually. And but as you say, there are lots of different people with different motivations who are involved in that, and some of them are glad to exploit that. And so, who do you get to do it, and how do you trust it? But in a way, this goes on now. We have companies are being told frequently, sometimes truthfully, sometimes not. You have a vulnerability, and I'll tell you what it is if you pay this much money. Is this payment for services or blackmail? And so trying to understand, dealing with those people, that is a sort of crowdsourcing of problems. That is going on now. You're talking about organizing it. In a way, it may be better leaving disorganized. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Considering the human factors as managing vulnerabilities using like security awareness and so forth, do you have any comments where we can go in the future, at least for our children, so that they may become aware of all these issues and so forth? Because I believe that the human factor affects a lot.
I got two contradictory things to tell you. One is that when security's left to users, we're sunk. The other is I do believe in educating people to reduce the number of stupid things they do. And in my family we talk about that. My daughter's grown up enough, she gets it. What do you do with 8-year-olds now who got fancy gizmos and whose judgment in the nature of things is never going to be very good? This is maddeningly difficult. I'm asked this often, and I don't have a very good answer. Sometimes I go away thinking, boy, I'm glad my kids grew up before this problem my grandchildren will have. And the country has it, the culture has it. How do you control this sort of thing? And, again, you ask mama or dad, do they want their kid being tracked? No. Well, they just gave their kid at 7 years old one of these things with GPS in it. Well, why? Because I want to know where they are at all times. Wait a minute. This doesn't compute, right? So we are rushing headlong into this. This hasn't been imposed on us. We find this connectivity irresistible, constant connectivity. My mother didn't know where I was when I was 7 years old at the time, I can tell you that. Of course, things were safer, but this is part of the problems we have. Do we tolerate giving our children, not putting them under constant surveillance all the time? But the kids love this stuff. And there are studies now on little infants who are enamored with screens. They just can't take their eyes off them. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for this. Yes, sir, in the blue.
So, recently I heard that a lot of companies should stop worrying about who's getting in and worry more about what's getting out. Do you feel that statement is correct at this time?
Largely. It's an exaggeration, but there's a useful bit of truth in it. I don't think that people need to not worry about who's getting in. I think that what's really being said when people like the head of information assurances at NSA say something like this, what they're saying is there's certain actors we have to assume are good enough to get in because we know how to do it. And we're no longer so arrogant to think that only Americans are smart enough to figure this stuff out, which has been a problem. So I don't think it's right not to worry about who's getting in. And for most businesses, there's a lot of junk in this that you really do want to keep out. But focusing on what's being exfiltrated as opposed to who's infiltrating is really an important aspect of a layered security program. We're talking about layered security, right? I trust everybody in this room understands when they talk about a firewall that that's a bad phrase, right? There's no such thing. A firewall is a filter, and it can only filter for a modus operandi that it's already seen and a line of code that it's already seen. And besides which, they don't catch everything and that's out there, and they don't even catch everything we know about, because McAfee and Symantec and Kaspersky and everybody else have to make cost-value judgments about what stuff's important enough to put in. So, but perimeter security is one very small part of that. And understanding what's leaving, is it out of the pattern? Is it too much? Is it coming from the wrong place? This is a really important part of a layered security program. But also to do it well, when I said wrong place, means segmenting servers so that everybody doesn't have access to everything. You know, remember when the Bradley Manning business first happened with WikiLeaks? People would come up to me and say, boy, the Army must be really stupid. Why does a private in Iraq have access to confidential secret conversations between our ambassador and the King of Saudi Arabia, or the private and embarrassing comments of our ambassador in Reykjavik about the Icelandic economy? Totally correct. But I'd have to explain to him that it wasn't the Army that was stupid, it was the State Department, which dumped all this stuff into the defense network. So that, which was basically like an M&M. It has this moderately hard shell, but once you're in it, you're into everything, unsegmented. And I would then look at this. I remember one kid, I looked at the guy and said, tell me something. Why does the guy in your mailroom have access to everything on your server? And I kind of enjoyed watching him turn white, because it was the same problem that he thought the Army was stupid to have. And so, you know, it used to be that we tagged, we classify information in the government and we give people security clearances for what they're able to see. We're starting to see much more role-based access to information in companies. Okay, we're not going to be an M&M anymore. We're going to be like a submarine with lots of compartments, and we can close the doors. And you get to see this, but your job doesn't require you to see our latest financials. And your job doesn't require you to see our business plan and are thinking about that. And your job doesn't require you to see bid data, and so on. This is easier to say than to do, and one can be over fine about it. But this is coming. More businesses are going to be doing this. I don't know if we have time for one more of this. I think we're out of time. We're out of time, everybody. So thank you very much for coming to listen. I hope it's and I got to plug this very good book, which really lays it out for the people that you deal with every day who don't understand. Thank you.